Hey everybody, today's video is going to be about how we make decisions when we feel completely overwhelmed, we're lost in our thoughts, we've got too many options, too many consequences, and where do we begin to just get clarity, to get centered, and not feel like we're going to fail miserably and destroy every essence of our lives. Because I know that we can all get a little bit overwhelmed and sometimes that can create a feeling of just gloom and doom. And I know that I do it. I think most people feel like we want to make the right decision, we want to move forward in our lives, and what happens if we make the wrong decision. So I wanted to do this video just to talk about different ways to get clarity and to organize our thoughts in a way that we can feel a lot more liberated and free in moving forward. So the first thing that I do when I've got to make a decision, I have no idea what to do, is I will make a list. And by writing everything down, a lot of times it helps me get some perspective. It helps me get some objectivity. I'm a believer that when we have stuff in our head, we can feel so overwhelmed. It goes round and round and round. We repeat old patterns. We get really nervous. We get a little bit of too much anxiety when we're in our heads. By writing it down and being able to see it and be objective, it can feel like, you know what, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. This isn't as monumental as I thought it was. This is much more digestible than I had imagined it to be. And then the next thing that I do too is I also do, it's kind of old school, is a pros and cons list. And I will do that just to feel like I'm really looking at every angle. And to make it a little bit more realistic, I will rate each item from a scale of 1 to 5. So it accomplishes two things. By just looking at the amount of items, it's not really fair if something's not really as much a big deal and something else is a big deal. But it also allows me to feel a little bit more free in just writing down the little things that are going to bother me about a situation, or the little things that I'm worried about, without judging myself too much, because I know that I'm just going to give it a 1. I know I'm just going to give it a 2. So I don't feel like that's something that I can't write down. And so it evens out the playing field. And then when you add up each column, sometimes it's really clear, sometimes it's not, and it's a good idea to go back and look at that and say, well, what can I add here? What can I look at a little bit more realistically? But it really helps put things in perspective again, because not everything is created equal. And the next thing that I do is I also do a lot of journaling, and I've talked about that in a bunch of my videos. But something that I'll do when I've got to make a decision is I will audio journal on my phone, and hearing myself for some reason really gives me clarity too, because I feel like I'm listening to somebody else. And how can I give this person advice? What would I recommend that this person do? I've read someplace that somebody pretends that a friend of theirs, they pick a friend or they pick a family member, and they pretend that that friend or that family member is coming to them and saying, this is my situation, what would you recommend that I do? And that really helps them, because they feel like they really are giving that advice to somebody else. I find that it helps to journal, because when I'm just listening to my voice, I feel like I get a lot of objectivity. And another thing that I remember, and I might even write it down, is that most things are not the end of the world, right? So when you need to make a decision and we're so frantic about making the wrong decision, it will stop us from doing anything. And I'll write down what is the worst that can happen. And if the consequences are truly insurmountable and they're not fixable, I may do something in that vein, but a little bit less to that extent. So for instance, if I wanted to move across the country, start over, and not really know the area, if I feel that there's too many consequences that I can't live with, I might go visit the place and live there short term without making the full commitment, and then seeing how it feels, so I can get a better sense of how I can ease into the situation instead of just packing up all my stuff and leaving, and like not having a job and that kind of stuff. So it's putting things in perspective, and it's also eliminating some of the fear, realizing that most things are not the end of the world. Most things can be fixed. And, I had said in a previous video about the polarity of life. It's like, in order to know what's good, sometimes, unfortunately, we've got to live through the bad and not the so great. And then we appreciate what we have, but we also learn about ourselves. And, I really thought that I was going to want to live in a big city, and I didn't. And I don't want to live in a big city, or I really wanted to have a certain social circle, and travel amongst these types of people. And I realized that doesn't really work for me. And sometimes we have to do it in order to realize that it's not right for us, because we don't have the experience before we make the decision to know for sure. And the last thing that I do is I will sit quietly and just really be still. And that's hard because we're always sort of being distracted by people, the news, social media, work, our own thoughts. How do we just sit quietly, go to a place that you're not going to be interrupted, put earphones in if you need to, or whatever it is, not to be distracted, and to really take that time and listen to our bodies. Our bodies have intelligence. Our bodies generally will not lie to us. It's important to listen to the intelligence of our bodies. It will tell us what we need to know if we're really in tune and not afraid to ask ourselves. Get out of our head, get into our body, and to really feel and to ask ourselves the question, and then just be still. Just to sit with it and to see how it feels. And many times that we get the answer. The other things that I've done, it sounds kind of silly, but I'll share it with you anyway, is I will sometimes look in the mirror and ask myself the question. It's really hard to lie to yourself. It's really hard to look in your face and lie to yourself. And that has worked for me. So I'll just ask myself the question, and I know when I'm looking at myself, I've got to get real. I can't BS myself. It is what it is. Even if I do kind of lie to myself, my eyes look back at me and go, really? You really would expect me to believe this? Because obviously that's where the intuition is. That's where the instinct is. And that really helps me as well. So I just wanted to pass these things on. I know making decisions can be really tough. I know sometimes for me, just being tired and hungry and obsessed with something will make it even more difficult. This is just an opportunity to break it down, list it out, put things in perspective by giving things a grade, if you will, sitting still, thinking about the worst case scenario. Is it really that bad? And then being fearless enough to move forward with the courage that we can handle what comes our way. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have other recommendations, things work for you, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear them. I'd love to see it. I think everybody else would love to see it who's watching this video. And also, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate your support. And until next time, thanks so much for watching.